welcome to another episode of REDtalks.live. I am Nathan Pierce, your host, and I have a guest on today, slightly different topic. We're going to talk a bit about the whole how you get started. Everyone has a starting point somewhere. And with me today, I have Vinny Mazabat. Vinny, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
And Vinny, tell us a little bit about your background and how I know you, where you came from before.
I'm a senior consultant on the F5 professional services team in the Southeast, and my background was mostly apps, and I kind of learned the F5 piece, and that's where I am now.
Awesome. Now, the reason I asked Vinny to come on this episode is a lot of people ask, they're really excited about this whole world of automating and programmability, and they really want to get in, but they're not from a kind of development background, and actually learning where to start can be very difficult. It's not just about read this book on this language. I mean, that, in fact, that can be a terrible way to start. You need some kind of incentive or some kind of initiative or a project to get going. And I'll be honest, I've sat down and thought, what's my next project going to be? And if you're trying to force an idea to be a reason to learn something, I mean, that can be tricky. And chatting with Vinny recently, we're both in Seattle, and we're having a conversation, and he started sharing just this awesome side project, not related to his job, that is what he used to learn all the skills that he's using today. And I thought it was really cool, and I wanted to share this with more people. Because I think this is a great way to get into programming, to start learning languages and frameworks. And well, on that note, I'm going to shut up for a second and just let Vinny talk through kind of that journey and what it was like for him to start. So why don't you give me a bit of background of that starting point for you?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it was just like you said, everybody's super excited. We're going to the cloud. We're going to automate. We're going to use this. We're going to use that language. We're going to do this. And I have all these flashy names and acronyms. And I'm like, it's a full-time job to keep track of all the different resources and the things that you could learn or places you could start. And most of them are half starts or false starts, right? And so for me, I was just completely lost. I'm supposed to lead a group of people and show them how to adopt these technologies, and I'm not even sure where to start myself. And so some of the technologies that came up were GitHub, GitLab, Python, Node.js. And to me, these are all foreign concepts. I mean, I just got my head wrapped around Tickle with iRules, right? So a lot of people have trouble with that. That's gotten a lot better at that from doing this, by the way. But and so for me, I'm going, okay, I have no idea where to start. I don't have a background in this, and so I was just kind of lost, right? And then one day, another extracurricular activity I enjoy, they have some equipment that has some old control systems, right? And the police and police academy used to train and qualify on, right? And this old equipment has old dirty laptops with DB9 connectors, right? So some old serial connectors, right? And so that's super clunky. Nobody wants to touch that. And more importantly, the instructor has to sit back way away from the people he's instructing, right? So it's not a very good thing if you can't be up there and help your students, right? And so, when you're 75 yards away from them or so. And so the owner of this establishment asked me, can you make this work on a tablet? And I went, I don't know. And then I said, but I could try. And so I ended up hopping on, getting a Raspberry Pi. And that one didn't have to code a whole lot, but it really opened the door and made me think about, well, what else could I do with these Raspberry Pis, right? And so this system is very expensive and very terrible and old, right? So I'm going, well, I just took a $35 part and enhanced this thing dramatically. Now the instructor can carry around a tablet and be behind the guys he's working with and control it the same as if he was sitting back at the line. And they were so happy. It completely changed their world, right? And so
I just got to stop you there for a second because I don't want to gloss over that. A police training facility, and they said, can you get this running on a tablet because it was a bit clunky and it would really help people out. I mean, this is sort of like left field of kind of like, oh, I need to automate my CI/CD pipeline and get, this WAF policy injected in. I mean, that is way more daunting than just a starting point of like, hey, wouldn't it be really cool? You'd be able to help us out in like training police officers. If this kind of thing could be doable via a tablet instead of, these clunky old laptops. Like, I love that it was just so far out there, but but just an awesome starting point.
Well, think about it. These are people who don't use tech. Like this, all this stuff is hardwired, and I just made it wireless. And they're like, "You're a wizard." And I'm like, "Well, not really, but I put some stuff together, and I tied some strings together, and I've noticed the more of this I do, that seems to be a lot of what people do when they're writing new things. Is they're just stringing things together, for lack of a better term. I think a great one I heard was stitching.
Yes.
Now, the stitching is that's a little more sound, right, than just tied, right? but so we'll call the tying is what I've been up to since then, right? So this gave me a great idea, and I was like, well, this system that's there, this old clunky thing that hasn't changed in 25 years, and the guy has been asking the company to do this for them for 10 years to do this thing, and I did it in 2 days.
So that
And
first, that's very DevOps of you. I mean, you went and collaborated with people outside of your kind of area of comfort, and together you came up with something. Like that's just how people have to be.
and they I mean I went to them and I was like, well, I think I could do more within this, right? And I I don't really care what the system is. We can control it, because now that I've got these new software tools in my kit, we can write our own stuff, right? And because they have all these proprietary expensive parts, and I was like, well, let's just replace them. Let's just put our own stuff in and control it with our own software. I can mimic the calls, right? And so like their minds are blown at this point. They don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But I was like, I don't care. It's making your lives better, so I'm excited to do it, right? And they're like, we don't I don't ask for money. This is just because I enjoyed it, right? And then I'm going, wow, this is great. Let's do more. So um, I did not have a background really in electronics. I could do a lot of stuff, but I did not have any pride here. I swallowed it, and I bought the kids teach yourself electronics kit, right, with some parts and some batteries, right? Really great one if you got kids, called Snap Circuits. It's like it's almost like belt buckles and things that like a coat you're going to snap together, right? Except it's carrying electronic current, right? And so my 4-year old, he's building LED lights and fans and things, right? Because he saw me doing this stuff and he wanted to be involved, and so now he's picking it up too. And it blew me away that he's able to build little circuits now, right? And so um, went on from that and decided, okay, well, Python's one of the things I need to know for Ansible, right? Course, well, how does that even translate? Where do I start with this? So I went in and I found a really great vendor called Adafruit, and they had a lot of parts that were similar to what I wanted to do. They're a good place to get your Pis, your Raspberry Pis, and they had some projects using Python with some examples, right? So everybody starts with some snippet somewhere, right? And so I started playing with that, and then I found out some of the limitations of writing in a synchronous language, right? I can't simultaneously listen for things and take actions at the same time while my thread is locked. And so I started playing with threading, and found that it was very much not fun, because a lot of threads would just orphan and hang
Yeah.
out, and you couldn't close them later because you needed that event to come back and talk to them, but it was just off in space. And so the other language that came up a lot was Node.js, and they told me it was asynchronous, and it was great for networking, and this is what's going to be the future for F5 tech. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, how do I do that? And so I actually ended up rewriting my whole application, and I think I skipped over what the application was, so I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
so is that what I actually did was I decided to take what I'd done for them and build my own target system.
So do
And
you want to just at that point, I mean, show the video for the people listening and are wondering why they're not seeing Vinny. It's not because he's running from the police. He's helping them. It's because he's actually going to show us some really cool stuff. So do you want to just show the video you showed me a little earlier, and then just walk us through kind of what it is you developed there?
so we started. I started with PVC pipes from Home Depot and some duct tape, right? So I got my Raspberry Pi and some airsoft toys, and you can kind of see the pie on the floor here. You can see some of the sensors probably tied to here. They're hidden behind this cardboard. Obviously, you can't see that, but I wanted to measure impact, and I also wanted to take action, so that would be dynamic, right? So a lot of systems just take hits and don't do anything with it, and so my goal was to provide something that was dynamic for the users, right? So they can't get into a rhythm. They don't do the same thing over and over, and it makes life are just more realistic training for them, right? And so a lot of departments and stuff, they can't afford these things. This stuff exists, right? But the companies who sell it, it's just insanely expensive, right? And so, I wanted to bring it down to something that you could go buy on Amazon, right? Like that, or like an apartment could order a bunch of them, right? So, um, I had some help from my buddy who was on with electronics here. So he helped me test out some of the sensors, which is super fun for him because then we moved on to erector sets, right? Just like the software, the hardware piece, you can see how the parts are still over here, and it's got I've moved on to servos and things like that, and so it's kind of an evolution of trying different things and seeing what doesn't work, and so really interesting concept. I spent a lot of time dealing with was that failure is when you don't learn something. So just because you tried something, it didn't work, you learned that that didn't work. I think they credit Edison was saying that, right? That he learned a thousand ways not to make a light bulb before he made it. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really important to remember is that the people who are extremely successful look that way because one out of a thousand things might have worked, right? And so, and it only takes one, right? But you don't see the other 999, right? And so everything just looks magical. So for me, I went on to actually I can show you some more stuff, little bits more towards the code. So to get an idea what's happening there, I've got some web services and they're recording actual impacts, right? And so it gets much more complicated than that later on because there's more important things that the people using this care about. I don't want to get into too much detail on that one, but basically the idea was that I can take this thing, I can make it from nothing, and for part of this was me doubting me because I have no background in this. I've never done any software. I didn't think this was possible, and so like that moment when you saw the one on the floor and I got PVC pipes and airsoft working, and it's like this is Thanksgiving, right? And like all the
Yeah.
families that are like, "What is he doing? What is all this crap on the floor?" Standard nerd stuff, right? And so for me, I was going, "This is it. I can actually do this." And that's when I enlisted some friends and got the 3D printing involved to make the more advanced platforms. Like you saw some of the little green guys, and I'm sure when that went by. So those are like kind of the next level of this. Um, and there's actually much bigger ones, but there's some technical challenges, we'll say, that are still being worked out. So let's see. All right, so yeah, that brought me to the node, right? So go ahead. Sorry, I was gonna
I
say.
mean, before we go on to kind of like where people should start and like some good resources, I just want to iterate again, like the fact that you had something that you kind of wanted to succeed at, you knew it was going to help some people. I mean, that was that the thing that kind of motivated you to see this through when you saw like, oh, I'm doing something cool here for someone. I mean, that's what the kind of social coding movement is all about. Like, how can I help? How do I share early and get feedback? Can I ask friends to help me out because I know they know a little bit about this and about that? I mean, all of that kind of motivates you forward, doesn't it? Like, did that really energize you to kind of see this through and keep learning?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it helped me in so many other areas because I picked up these tools I hadn't used before. And I'm gonna be totally honest, it's a shitload of fun to be frank, right? Because
Yes.
like once I have this automated thing and I'm not throwing stones at paper anymore, right? Um, it's a really good time, right? So obviously there's a shot again like a little web UI, and so I wrote a web service to handle user inputs, right? And then I have each station has another web service that I learned about API calls, right? So I wrote my own APIs on these guys because I've been asked at work to protect APIs all the time. Like, what is this? Why do I need this? What am I going to do with this? How do I like? And so what really helped me understanding their needs was writing my own and getting it's about transferring information, right? All of this at the at the very core, right? So um and then what problems do you have? Are you protecting the variables that are coming across, right? Because these are things I deal with APM and ASM or F5 products that deal with access control and web application security, right? Their web application firewall. So I'm looking at, oh, well, I didn't protect this against parameter tampering in the code I wrote, which is I'm thinking most devs are going, hey, it works. And then they move on to the next thing, right? And so in my mind, I'm like, I know better. And so I need to look at this stuff. I need to do parameter sanitizing. And and stuff like that. And so that really helped me understand like customer needs better, right? So the next time I had an engagement, I'm working with a customer and they're showing me this API they need me to protect and deal with, and it's got all these problems that they hadn't thought of, and I'm able to use the F5 technologies to help them make them better or protect it, right? And so that really emboldened me for this, and then I continued on with this project too for myself, right? Like you're asking, what drove me to keep going, and like I said, it's a blast. It's in the end, it's going to help people. The bigger ones are obviously more important. Let me see if I've got something there for you. So just imagine that there's stuff hiding behind whatever, right? And in this instance, these things are automated; they can pop up and do their thing. So that's not live fire, just so you were. So if you're confused, right? So I've got some hooks into special training ammunition through family. So that really kind of it's what I originally designed this stuff for. So that because it's all non-lethal, it's meant to help practice skills, not break things. So
That is an important point. REDtalks.live is an advocate for doing things safely. Training, education is key.
that's right. That's what it's all about. So let's see. Yeah, but I mean, so
So
I
where did
had
you
a.
start?
Oh,
Like,
God.
so what resources did you use? What can we share with other people to help them kind of find a project and get around some of these obstacles at the beginning of the journey?
So if you're ready for a shameless plug, Adafruit was a phenomenal resource. I mean, it was like, okay, let's go find a part, right? Anything, like I pick anything from them, and then they give you projects that you can do with those parts. Usually, unless I pick something wrong, right? No, this is tools. I lied. Let me find a part. So just anything really. And then they have kits or projects tied to those things, right? So under learn, and then they have just incredible segments talking about how to do and implement these different technologies, right? And if you're really into it, they do these box things that they'll send you that have projects with all the parts you need to complete them, right? I think it's this thing here. Yeah. And so for me, it was just an incredible resource to learn some of the Pi stuff, give some code snippets to get started. But once I got past that, I moved on into, more specific challenges like, how to deal with a particular input or how to send stuff across. And that's where the node is the beauty of package manager, right? Um, I just started going, okay, well, I want to do this. Okay, so like words to numbers, right? Just pick a library, go see. Oh, I didn't find it. I think I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. So I think it's like integers to words or integers to text or something like that. So basically, imagine you've got a list of items on it, right? And you want to return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in integers, right? And then but the user needs to see text instead, right? And you don't want them to see that. But if you're cheating and just using the values in the HTML, you need those things to match or sync some way, right? Because this is, like I said, it's a series of hacks, right? Like, okay, well, that's the way I got it to work the first time. The next time I figured out, oh, I can, map values to like a table or something, right? And then I can pull that table value back, which is obviously getting better each time, right? So each time you come and rewrite, it's just like writing a English paper, right? Like or something like that for school, because it's supposed to be a development process, I guess. And now I've used the dirty word for me because I was like, I'm not that thing, right? And I just said development. So you put out a version and you come back and review it and you fix the things that you now learned you could do better, and that's how you get and grow with it. And so that was a huge one. I'm trying to think of what other resources now. I mean, like
So
a lot
what
of
we're
lot of
going to do,
Stack Overflow, a lot of Git, looking at other projects people have done, looking at Googling examples of other GPIO stuff, right? And then what is GPIO and how's that work and what are these libraries? And finding out that like an interpreted library calling C is not as good as a library directly calling C, or that kind of stuff. And so those are all things that came out of just working with it, right? And
yeah.
so it definitely just kind of grow from there.
So
So
we're gonna share some of the links. You've got a whole bunch of resources, some books you even mentioned earlier that were a good read, kind of nuances that maybe you wouldn't discover from Stack Overflow or various other sites. So we'll post those links into the articles. Like I think you had a great list earlier. So you brought something else up just there.
I spent. Oh, I forgot. That's I didn't even think about. So we talked before about having just a litany of resources to go through, right? And if you go to those resources, just an insane amount of information. Back to the, we come full circle to where do I start? Because I know now I know what I need to learn. I'm there, but there's 1,000 things here to learn. Which one is important to me? And what drove that is that project, right? So okay, I have this problem. So a lot of people like to create solutions before they find problems, and they go out looking for problems to solve with those solutions, and that's not a fan of that. I'd like to solve existing customer problems. So in my case, I'm the customer, so I was able to go, I have this problem. I'm going to go see if I can figure out how to fix it, and I think that's a much more effective way to move. Udemy was a huge useful resource. That's another online learning. And what was particularly struck me about Udemy is most online learning stuff you see, it's done through some training organization. It's done, very structured, and it's usually presented by people who didn't actually do the stuff. Now, in Udemy, it's the complete opposite. These are not instructors. These are people who are working professionals. These are people who generate these courses in like their extra time, or maybe they've become trainers from that. But these are all people who've done it, right? So the projects that they're showing are like start to finish full stack stuff. So I spent a lot of time doing full stack things, right? Because I was like, what does that even mean? And then I learned, okay, well, if you use Node and you use this library on top of it and you use that, and then what does that look like in the end? And probably the most painful thing is figuring out that some piece of your library is not going to work and you got to write it all over. So back to the discussion about doing things over and over, I rewrote this several times. I did it in Python, I did it in Node, and then I rewrote it in Node again because I learned new tasks. I remember my first instance was this just monster script, and the next one I started learning about functions, and then I started learning about why functions needed to not have anything static in them. And these are probably basic tenets of programming that you would have had in some sort of class, but I had never had those things. So I was experiencing how this made this better, and then and getting better at adding features, because now that I understand those concepts, I was able to add features in minutes rather than days. And so
That's a
yeah.
really good tip, actually. Nobody is able to read the right book that makes them perfectly code the very first time they write anything. And I think it's really great to go back to early things you looked at, read through it, just take a look at, like, I can see how I would have got there and thought that that was the right way, and just really take time every now and then to appreciate what you've learned since then. Like, maybe you would have done, callback after callback after callback, and then you learn about how to do promise chains. And realize, wow, that's actually a much way better way of doing this. Like, just it's important to go back and look at things and think, you know what, I wasn't stupid. Don't be hard on yourself, but just like take that moment to kind of appreciate how far you've come and what you've learned, and share some of that journey with people. I think once we get to the destination and we're like, actually, I'm pretty confident now, I can kind of churn some stuff out, we kind of forget that there's millions of other people that are just starting that exact journey, and we need to kind of help those people out, which is exactly why I wanted to get you on this episode.
And actually, it's infectious too, because I have started writing guides to introduce my team of consultants to this stuff, right? Because before they're like, "What's Node? I can't do that." And I wrote like a tiny Word document that said, "Hey guys, go here, install this. You can run it. I don't care if you're on your Mac, your PC, your toaster. I don't care. You just run this stuff and Node will run, because JavaScript runs just about everywhere." And then and most of them, these are full on network people, right? They don't, this is not their thing, right? Because they always look to me for that stuff, and now they're like, wow, this isn't so bad. And I did this, and I went on and I enhanced it, because I started them with Express, which is a package that builds a web server for you, right? Because I wanted it to be relatively easy for them to see, hey, look at the power of this package manager. I can just spin something up, right? And I got them saying hello world. And I said, your challenge is to make it say something other than hello world, which I guess is like an entry level standard, rite of passage programming thing, right? So the feedback from that was phenomenal. They loved it, and so I'm gonna keep sharing and spreading that, and it's moved on to other tech too. And it's come back to the work stuff, which was the original catalyst for why do I need to know that, and why do I need to know that? I know all these fancy names. The resource I'm showing now is the Udemy one. Um, and that's it. You talked about having a library of things to come back to. So when you buy a Udemy course, they stay, right? So it's like it's permanent, and so you can, as long as they're in business, I'm assuming, right? So it's like the car dealership warranty, right? So so as long as this is here, I can come back and say, hey, I did that section on chatbots, or I did that section on database calls, and so you talked about promise chaining. That was actually the next major thing that I got into, because once I had switched over to this asynchronous language, everything was wonderful except for things that needed to be in order. So, um, so then I had to come back and think about it the other way. But honestly, I think I've settled. I'm happy with Node over my Python stuff, as much as Python's out there. And so it's skewed me a little bit, because I'm starting to look at Python and go stuff. And I wonder if there's a Node library that'll let me interact with that Python without doing it. So maybe that's something else I need to deal with. But it also helped me learn Git, and so I got a GitLab, and those are another concept that was, like I said, was alien to me. I did a lot of. I had a previous employer where I did a lot of deployment of Windows imaging and stuff. Like, this is many years ago at this point, but I needed some way to deploy my software consistently to all my new devices, because now I have 6 or 10 of these little guys out there that need software updates when I write new code revisions. And then I was like, well, look at this Git thing. I could just push these updates out to them, and then ta-da! It's just like I was imaging. And instead of doing the whole OS, I'm just sending the code updates, which I thought was incredible, and that really helped me solidify what that's for. Um, so and then
Totally. There's so many tools out there that have actually solved what people in the networking operations world are kind of being expected to be able to deliver now. A lot of these things, the cool bit is we're not having to invent a lot of these tools. Like, configuration as code or infrastructure as code is actually not new. We just have to kind of break out of the routine and go and investigate and experiment with and learn some of these tools, and realize that actually a lot of the work's done. We just need to change the way that we've been operating. It's everyone likes to talk about digital transformation, but to me, digital transformation has just shone a huge spotlight on the operational transformation that we need to take to leverage things that have already been solved in other parallel areas. That's my take.
No, but it's perfect, right? Because the beauty is being able to identify what tools somebody else already has in the toolbox that you can apply to your situation, right? Because that's the definition of thinking outside of your box, right? So and I think that's, like you said, that there's a very DevOps thing to do, to walk into this thing where they're like, hey, can you make this wireless for us? And I was like, well, I got my toolbox over here that says I can. Well, you want that serial signal over there? Well, I can do that, no problem. I didn't know why I needed that, but now that you have this problem that you've presented me, I can solve it with these tools I had hidden over here. But the one thing you want to watch out for is I'm going to call back to my stats professor, Dr. Rast, real quick, was the hammer fallacy. You familiar with that?
Please do explain for our listeners.
Okay, so the hammer fallacy was the idea that today today I learned how to use a hammer. So every problem I see is a nail, right? So you got to watch out for that one, because like I said before, I was starting to find myself aligned to a particular language, and that's not something you want to do. So you don't want to try it. You need to see if there's somebody's already solved it, like you said, or see if there's some other tool that is available.
Yeah,
before you write it.
You got to keep the scope broad. Look at other things as well, and try not to let it narrow all the time. Definitely, that's really
definitely easy to get hyper focused. That's for sure.
So we're about out of time. Thank you very much for sharing all of that really cool project. I mean, and you get to help the police training center. So that's just awesome. I love that you found something outside of work that helped you develop skills that really did apply to what you're doing inside of work. I just think it's a really cool way of doing it. I don't know if you have like stock in Raspberry Pis or something like that. I have a few laying around myself that I make do all sorts of weird and wonderful things for me. But it is a really cool way of starting out, though. Definitely for safe experimentation outside of production deployments.
Oh, no doubt. And the price point is unreal. So
very small barrier to entry. So thanks for coming along, Vinny. You've been listening to Vinny is a consultant there for FF5 Networks, and me, your host, Nathan Pierce. Hopefully that was useful to people. We will share some links, as I said. So have a great day, Vinny. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk to you. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, and thank you for listening. Cheers. Bye.